Hi everybody, it's Michael. I'm back with another one of my walkthrough videos, and today I want to show you Náufragos. Náufragos is Spanish for the shipwrecked or the castaways, and the title together with this picture is probably enough to let you take a guess at what the theme is. The players are shipwrecked on an island and they have to work together to first survive by gathering food and building fires and shelter, and also explore the island to find a way off it. Mechanics wise, this is a semi-cooperative adventure, meaning that while the players have to cooperate to survive and get off the island, there will also be a winner in the end, and the game's story for that is that whoever has the greatest adventure on the island and the greatest story to tell about that will be the winner. So during the gameplay, the players will collect the so-called story points, and of those players who make it off the island, the one who has the most story points in the end will be the overall winner. The gameplay basically consists of two main elements. So the one is your classical worker placement, where everybody has pawns and they put them into the castaways camp to trigger certain actions, like collecting wood or food, or go fishing, or start an expedition into the island. And the second part are those expeditions, which is, I would say, a push your luck kind of element, where you draw cards which present you with different situations and events, and you have to make decisions, very similar to a choose your own adventure book. And depending on your equipment and how good you roll and other effects, there will be different follow-ups and repercussions. And basically there are a number of different stories in this game called plots, and you only put so many starting plots in the game in the beginning, so every game will be a little bit different, because A, what plots you put into it, and B, how you progress through these plots. Now what I have here is the German version called Náufragos, but with the subtitle Die Schiffbrüchigen from Lookout Spiele. There's already the original Spanish version and a French and Italian version on the market, and the English version will come out in about 2 weeks time, I think, the second week of August, from Passport Studios. Just to give you some information, the game is by Alberto Corral. It plays 1 to 4 players, so yes, it plays solo, in about 120 minutes, ages 12 and up. Before I start with the walkthrough, a couple of things. There has been quite a discussion online about the rules of this game. So the Spanish original rules seem to be fine. I haven't read so many complaints about them. The French rules seem to be a little bit problematic, and there are also some issues with the German rules. To be more specific, Asmodee, so the publisher, has put a hiatus on the distribution of the game until the rule problems can be fixed. Actually, it's not too bad, but you'll have a hard time to play this game based on the rules that come with the game alone. For this video I took a very long look at the English rules, so I would definitely recommend that. But Lookout Spiele have also said that they're working on improved rules, and those should come out very soon. Before I start, 2 more things. The first thing is the semi-cooperative nature, which will lead to a lot of negotiation and maybe a little bit of backstabbing and back and forth. I'll try to simulate some of this in my walkthrough with 3 players, but of course the real gameplay may put a lot more emphasis on these kind of things. And second, I have the German version, and yes, there's lots of text, so I'll try to translate as I go. And the other thing, of course, is this is kind of a story-based game. There are these plots, so there might be some spoilers, but there are so many different events in this game, so even if you were to remember all of the things you will see now in this video, you will definitely have fun playing it on your own later on. So then let's dive right into the walkthrough of a 3-player game. Have fun! So as always, let's take a look at the components first, and let's actually start with the various card decks in the game. First of all, we have the plot cards, and these have a number in a circle on the upper left, and those should be put in order. So we have many zeros, and then we have 1, 2, and so on. So these are put in a stack and placed somewhere next to the game board. And then from all the cards with the zeros, we randomly select 8. Okay, I've selected my 8 cards, 7 yellow ones and 1 green, and the other 0 cards are just returned to the box, and we won't need them this game. Then we add these 8 cards to their respective exploration decks. So we have the yellow one for the coast, the green one for the jungle, and the red one for the heart of the island. So our 1 green card goes into this deck, and the others go to that one, and then those 3 decks are shuffled. And then we can take each deck and put it onto the respective space on the exploration board. On the exploration board we basically have a path through the coast, through the jungle, up into the heart of the island, and each player has a colored marker on the first space of this path. Then we also have a track down here which indicates the difficulty of returning to the camp after an exploration, and we have a white cube to mark this. Next we have this deck of cards which represents the remains of the shipwreck, and those are simply shuffled and then put onto this space on the main board. Then we have our event deck, and since we're playing with more than 2 players we have to remove all the cards that show this red-orange steering wheel down here at the left bottom. So we remove these 3 cards. And since it's a 3-player game, from the remaining cards we select 15 and shuffle them, and the others are removed from the game unseen. And then these 15 event cards are placed on the event deck space on the main board. Talking about the main board, on it we also have a track for the weather, and the weather starts sunny. Over here we have an offer of as many forage tiles as there are players in the game, and this basically represents the source of food we know at the beginning of the game where we can collect food from, and we have to find new sources because once these 3 tiles are gone, they're gone, but we have a whole huge supply up here. Then 6 black cubes are put onto this salvage the wreck track. Then we have various tokens for constructions, so we have this big help sign in the sand, this big bonfire, the 4 different stages of the shelter, and they start with the 1 on top and the 4 on the bottom. And then down here we have the fire, and currently it's out. And then we have our storage, where we start with 1 wood and 1 less food than the amount of players. Then in the supply we have a whole lot of other things: more wood, more food, black cubes and white cubes, dice, tiles with story points on them, which will be the victory points at the end of the game, and then various tokens that might come into play later on. Then over here we have our camp space that starts with 5 of these camp cards with white circles, and on the fishing action we stack fish tiles, basically everyone except the shark. The shark is not in the game at the beginning. And then finally we have our 3 player characters. The blue player plays Charles Barnard, who is a doctor, and everybody starts with 6 energy points that you mark with one of these cubes, and you also got 2 worker points and a lost on the island marker. And the blue player is also the starting player. He receives the starting player token and this extra pawn. The green player is playing Juana Maria Nicolas, and she will help us preserve our food so it won't rot. And finally the yellow player is playing Daniel Defoe, probably not the author, because he's actually a fisherman. And then they're ready to start the game. So every round starts with drawing the top card from the event deck. And first of all we have to adjust the weather. If it's a storm we move the weather cube 1 space to the left. If it's a sun we move 1 space to the right. So the weather is still sunny, a little cloudy, but everything is fine. Then we take a look at the upper right, where we see a black cube and a number on it. If on the remains of the ship track we have at least this amount of cubes, 1 cube is moved into the action space. And that means that debris has been washed ashore, and we can spend an action and some energy to actually try and salvage something from the debris. And then finally we have an effect. The effect is a storm is coming, and it says if the weather got worse through the last event card, the weather marker would immediately move to storm. Well, we didn't have a last event card, so this doesn't trigger. So we normally discard this, but there's some final information down here, and this is for the end game. Basically each event card will show at the bottom certain things we need or certain things we have to build to be able to escape from the island. For example, in this case it would be the captain's log, a hand mirror and a spyglass. And once we've reached the last space on the exploration track, we can see where the ships are coming, and then we will be able to try to get their attention by using the various objects we've built. So basically once we've reached the top of the mountain, the game will be over, and then we'll look at the current event card and all the remaining cards in the deck. And if we find 1 card on which we fulfill all the requirements, then we'll be able to escape the island. So basically the more of these items we get and the more of the stuff that we might need we build, and the faster we are, the more cards will remain and the more likely our rescue will be. And after we've gone through all the things on the card, it's just placed on top of the deck. And then the next phase of the 4 phases in a round are the player's actions. So the blue player is the starting player, and before he does anything with his blue pawns, he gets to place the white star player pawn, but only on a space in camp. So he can't place the white marker on any of these action spaces, and he decides to put it on here, which is planning an expedition. And it says, if your next action is to start an expedition, it won't cost you any energy, and you'll also get a story point tile. And then it's the blue player's regular turn, and he can place a pawn anywhere he likes on the main board. And of course he wants to start an expedition. The expedition space is down here, and since he's the first one, he will choose this space. And normally this would cost him 1 energy, but due to the effect of planning an expedition, he doesn't have to pay any energy for putting his pawn here. And also he'll be able to draw a tile from the story point tiles and look at it secretly, and it's a 4. And he just puts it down here in front of him. Then it's the green player's turn, and well, she's a cook, so she decides that the players need food. So she will gather some food. Gathering food is a space up here, and putting a pawn here on the first space, and you always have to go to the first space that is available, will cost her 2 energy. So she's down to 4. Mr. Defoe, being the camp's fisherman, decides to go fishing. And fishing is an action on the camp space. But you can never place your pawn directly on the camp. You will have to choose one of these spaces here that shows a card. And so he decides to do this really early on. Then the blue player decides to build a shelter. And on the shelter space, the energy cost is not clear, because it depends on what you're trying to build. And you actually pay the energy cost later on and not at the point where you place your pawn. The green player decides to gather some wood, which will cost another energy. And finally the yellow player will try to salvage something from the wreck that has been washed ashore, and that'll cost 2 energy. So he's also down to 4. And now, since everybody has placed their pawns, we will now resolve the actions. And this is done from the top to the bottom and from left to right. First, the green player is gathering food. So we flip over the first token here from our offer and put it into our storage. And this will give us 3 food at the end of the turn. Then the yellow player can perform camp action. He decided to go fishing. So normally when you take the fishing action, you would get 1 fish tile. But since he is the fisher, he gets a second one. So we just take 2 tiles, and they're also put into the storage box, but the 0 we can already return next to the board, so this was unlucky, but this one is another food at the end of the turn. Then the green player gathers wood. We just take 1 wood marker, put it into the storage, and then the yellow player salvages from the wreck, so this marker is returned. This one is removed from the game, so there are now only 5 chances to salvage something. And then we draw 5 cards from the top of the deck. And we found a piece of sail, twice parts from the hull of the ship, and ropes. And since the yellow player started the salvage action, he gets to select something first. In this case, this doesn't really matter because these are not items that anybody can keep. And he decides to take a piece of the ship's hull, and it says that we can put 3 wood into the storage area and then discard the card. So we now have a total of 5 wood in our storage area. Then the blue player selects a piece of rope, and so basically we just take a rope tile and put it into the storage area. So 1 rope. And now the green player has to choose between more wood, because we need a lot of wood for all the shelter and the bonfire. But on the other hand, a piece of sail is also nice, because you can use this either for a raft or also for a shelter later on. So she decides to pick this one, and it says to take a sail token and also put it into the storage. And this card is also removed from the game, and the ones that weren't picked are also discarded from the game. Then the blue player wants to build a shelter, and building the shelter will require a total of 3 energy and 2 wood. The wood is not the problem, but the players all together have to pay 3 energy, so although only 1 player decided to initiate this building action, everybody can chime in. And since the blue player is at full energy, he says that he will sacrifice 2, and they agree that the cook already has paid so much energy, and since the blue player has an expedition upcoming, he should stay at 4, and the yellow player decides to pick the last one, so they paid a total of 3 energy. Then they have to pay 2 wood, and then we can flip over this tile and put it down here at the shore. So normally, if you take a rest action, if you don't have shelter, all you get is 1 energy, and you can remove 1 wound since they're basically sleeping on the beach. But now, since we have this better shelter, we still discard 1 wood, but then we roll a die, and it's a 50-50 chance that we will at least regain 2 energy. And now the next better shelter will already cost 4 energy. And now, since building action was complete, the initiator of that building action, and that is the blue player, will get a story point token, and it's a 3. And finally, the blue player is starting an expedition. So we move up to the exploration board, and since the blue player's marker is in the yellow section, he can only draw from the yellow deck. And basically it's like a little bit of push your luck thing. You can either decide to go on or to return to the camp. The thing is that if you explore, the difficulty of returning to the camp will increase and increase, and at some point you have to bail out basically and try to head back. The difficulty is now only 4 because it always starts at 4 once you start a new expedition. And so we just drop the top card from the deck. And this is, this cursed island. First we take a look at this symbol here, which will increase the difficulty because it says +1. So the difficulty is now at 5. Then there is a flavor text in italic, which I'll just skip. And then the effect. You lose 1 energy. So he's down to 3. If your energy level is less than 3, you get a wound. But we're lucky since it is exactly 3. And this card is basically overcome and is just discarded from the game. Now we have a choice of moving on or returning. The thing is, returning means you have to roll 2 dice and you have to beat at least the number of the difficulty. So rolling 5 on 2 dice is not too difficult. So let's just go on. This one is a flooded cave. First of all, there's a foot icon, which means that all the players in this expedition, so only the blue player, will advance 1 space on the track. Then there's a symbol for a story point. So he gets a 3rd one, which is also a 3. You find the hidden entrance to a cave that is basically hidden by the sea. Maybe when the tide is low, you'll be able to get into the cave and explore it. Add card 58 to the camp. So this one is basically done, it's discarded. But we go into a huge stack of cards. Find card number 58, which is exploring the flooded cave, and add it to our camp. So basically, starting from the next round, people can put a marker on here and start an exploration into this flooded cave. And we can still go on. Giant turtles. This will increase the difficulty of returning by 1. So we're at 6 now. Okay, so basically the story says that we found a beach somewhere along the coast with giant turtles. So this is a new source of food. I guess turtle meat can be eaten, and also the eggs are pretty tasty probably. So that means that we add 2 new forage tiles to our offer. So we would normally only have 2 more sources of food, which we know. But since we now found the beach with all the turtles, we can add another 2. And now basically that means that we can go for another 4 times of foraging before we run out of food. That's a solar eclipse. First of all, a foot icon. So we advance the space. Add card number 19 to the jungle deck. Okay, so this card is done. We find card number 19. It'll probably have a green background, and we'll add it to the green deck. So basically this plot got something started that will have results or repercussions later on. And then after that, the green deck is of course shuffled, because otherwise the new plot card would be right on top. So the green deck has been reshuffled, and we still decide to push on. Okay, this is another cave. It's not necessarily the one from before, although the illustration is the same. It's a cave in the cliffs, and we can immediately try to explore it if we want to. But first we have to increase the difficulty again by 1. If we want to explore it, we have to pay 2 energy and roll a die. So we're down to 1, and roll a die, which is a 1. That would mean that we slip, and a randomly selected explorer, there is only 1 in the team, would suffer a wound. That doesn't sound too good. So what we can do is we can discard 1 of our story point tiles, and of course we select the one with the 3 to re-roll a die, but only once. So if we still mess it up this time, there's no coming back. So this one is discarded, so that's 3 victory points gone. Hopefully whatever we'll do will be worth it. And that's a 5. 5 is delicious crabs. Each explorer gains 1 food, and we add another food token to the offer. So that's 1 food for us, which is put in our personal inventory. and also yet another tile added to our offering, because we now know our initial stuff and the turtles and the crab. And after we're done, two more things happen. First is that the pantry tile is put onto the main board. What this means is, I guess, that in the cave maybe they're cool and we can try to build some shelves in there where we can store our stuff. So basically, this is a new option that we can build the pantry. It'll cost 2 energy and 2 wood. And once it's built, we can store a food tile here, so it won't rot. And we just add it onto the main board here, and if somebody wants to build the pantry, he can use this space. And also finally, we have to add card number 80 to the ongoing expeditions. What does it mean? Down here there are 4 spaces, and basically everything that happens in an expedition that is not immediately resolved and that can be picked up at a later turn is added down here. So if we decide to push on, we can either go deeper into the cave or draw a new card. And since we're now down to 1 energy, we decide to head back to camp. So the difficulty is currently at 7, and basically the roll isn't modified because we don't get any bonuses. And for example, if the weather would be bad, then we had to subtract from our roll. So let's see if we're lucky. So that's an 11, so we basically return safely to camp. So that was the action phase, and now we go into the survival phase. First, all the food tiles, so both these and the fish, would be changed for white cubes, which represent food, but it would rot at the end of the turn. And here is where our cook comes in, because she can turn one of these tiles into the same amount of these tokens, so they won't rot. So let's just do this. So this tile is removed from the game and replaced with 3 food tokens, and then this one is replaced by 1 white cube. And the fish just goes back to the fish supply over here. Okay, now starting with the first player, each player can pick one of the food tokens or white cubes in the supply and either eat it themselves, put it back into the supply, or give it to someone else. So first, the blue player decides to eat this one, and this means that he gets back 1 energy, because whenever you eat, you get back 1 energy. Then the green player also decides to eat, so one of them is removed. Same holds for the yellow player, 1 is removed. And basically now that everybody has eaten at least 1 piece, they are safe, because whenever you don't eat, that means that you get 2 wounds and lose 1 energy, but maybe you want to eat more to get more energy back. And the blue player actually decides to eat 1 piece more. The others are at 4, so they say it's fine, and basically each of them leaves 1 of these food tokens in the storage, so the blue player can't touch them afterwards, but he still has his own piece of food that he can eat, so he's also now back at 4. And finally, it's resting close to the fire for everybody, but since nobody took care to actually light the fire this round, everybody again loses 1 energy because of the cold. And then it's the end of the round, and where everybody takes back their pawns if they didn't already do so. Then the starting player rotates in turn order, and then we would actually look for wounds and see if they got worse and got into traumas, but nobody has any wounds yet, so we can just skip that and move into the second round on the island. First is the event phase, so the old event card is discarded, and we draw the next one. The weather gets better again. Then, since we have at least 4 cubes remaining, one of them is put onto the action space. Infected wounds. When you're checking for infections or traumas in this round, wounds will turn into them at a roll of 1 or 2. Normally it's only a roll of 1, so we better avoid getting any wounds this round. Then the green player is the starting player. He can take any action on the camp. Now, we could go exploring these caves, but I think we should take 1 more round of taking care of the camp, maybe trying to light the fire, build another shelter, trying to salvage. And so the green player decides to pick the Act of Strength. This round you'll get an additional 3 energy, use white cubes to track it, but you also receive a wound. So whenever you receive a wound, you take 1 white cube and put it on your topmost space on the energy track, and basically you can't recover energy up to that space, and at the end of turn it might become an infection or trauma. Okay, so the green player now has an additional 3 energy. How would she like to spend it? Well, first of all, she will try to light the fire. And again, the amount of energy for that is variable, so she doesn't have to decide right now. The yellow player sees that a little bit of food is still missing. He decides that it's not worth to go out for 2 energy and get the food, but he decides to go fishing as early on as possible. The blue player decides to go and salvage. The green player will rest as the last action possible. The yellow player will decide to build another level of shelter, and the blue player also decides to rest. Okay, first thing that happens is that the yellow player can select any space on the camp tile, and he selects the fishing space. He gets to draw 2 tiles again because he's the fisherman. And again, it's only 1 food, but actually this is all we need for nobody to starve. Then the blue player gets to salvage. So we have another piece of sail, another part of the hull, seeds, ink and a pocket watch, and the blue player decides to pick the pocket watch. It'll be worth 1 victory point at the end of the game, and the effect is that if he's a start player, he's able to use the white pawn on the main board as well. He can perform an action there immediately before all the other actions are triggered. The only thing he can't do is start an exploration. Then the green player selects seeds, and she has to decide whether they should be eaten, meaning that she will get 3 food markers, or whether they should be sown. And since we're not too tight on food right now, let's sow them, meaning that we'll add card 1 to the camp. And card 1 is a vegetable patch where we can either seed or get vegetables from. And then the yellow player decides to pick this card, so we add another 3 pieces of wood to our storage. Now, lighting the fire costs a variable amount of energy, and the thing is, you spend an amount of energy and after that you roll the die, and if you roll the number of energy you spend or lower, then you'll successfully light the fire. So the green player has 3 extra energy, which will be gone at the end of the round anyway, so she decides to pay these, and just to be sure, a 4th one. And then dice rolled. That's exactly lucky, so the fire is burning, and once the fire burns, as a free action, anybody can place 1 wood on the fire. Then it's building another level of shelter. Now we need 4 energy. The players agree that the yellow player will only pay 1 energy, and then the blue one will pay 1, and then the green one will pay 2, because blue and green will be resting anyway later on. And then 2 wood are removed, and we have a next level of shelter. And for the 3rd level, we'll need 4 energy and 2 wood again, but also a piece of rope. But luckily, we already have that one. Then the blue player rests, meaning we'll roll a die, and it's a 50-50 chance of either recovering 2 or 3 energy. In this case, it's only 2. And then the green player recovers 3 energy and is also able to discard his wound. And then it's already the survival phase, so this fish is changed into 1 white cube. Everybody eats 1 piece of food, and finally, since the fire is burning, the wood is consumed, and everybody receives yet another point of energy. Then there are no wounds that could get infected. These pawns are removed. Starting player token is moved on, and we can go into the next round. Okay, event card. The weather gets worse again, but no need to worry yet. Then 3 or more cubes. This is still the case, so another piece of the wreck is washed ashore. Okay, and the event is getting to know the environments. The starting player can choose either add 2 wood to the storage or receive 1 piece of food. We still have 3 pieces of wood, and we'll have to get out to get food anyway, so let's get 2 more wood. And then it's actions. The yellow player decides that it's time to explore the caves, and since you have to go out when the tide is still low, that's very early in the morning, so this happens first. And basically the card says that the only way to explore these is if the starting player uses the start player marker to select the card, and also uses his first action to do this. And the other players can join, but they also have to use their first action for this. The players decide that the green player will also join, but that the blue player will stay in camp. And then we have to resolve card number 59. Card number 59, the Subterranean Lake. We have to shuffle cards 60 to 65 and put them face down as an ongoing exploration. Because basically the story is that down there in the Subterranean Lake we find an old pirate ship, and exploring the pirate ship is an independent exploration. Basically we have to go through all these random cards, and we can return at any time, but we will also have to pay in mind that the flood can rise again during the day, so we have to get out in time. And once we decide to head back, we have to resolve card 68. Okay, we're exploring the pirate ship. The yellow player goes first, so he draws a card, and it's the captain's room. You find a heavy metal chest. If you have a key to open it, resolve card 67. If you don't, add the captain's room to the ongoing explorations. So we don't have a key yet, so we just put the card up here. And then it's the green player's turn, because now there's 2 players on the expedition, they go back and forth, and of course we don't want to head back yet. This is the storage room. You look through the storage room very thoroughly, but you can't find anything. Remove the storage room from the game. Okay, yellow player's turn again. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the storage room. The other thing was like the powder room, but well, anyway, so now, this is the storage room. In one corner you find a little key. The current explorer takes card 66, then the storage room is removed from the game. Okay, so the current explorer, which was the yellow player, gets the key. So it's the green player's turn again, and instead of going through the unexplored rooms again, he decides to pick one card from the open ones. He can't pick the caves, of course, because this is an independent exploration, but we can use the captain's room again. So basically, we have the key, we can resolve card 67. This one is removed. Card 67, the content of the chest. If the explorers pay a total of 2 energy, find and resolve card 69 and decide which explorer will receive it. So they decide to pay 1 energy each, and they get card 69, which is a flag, which can be used to replace either the hand mirror or the spyglass when trying to track the ship. Okay, and they decide that the green player will get this, and then they're basically done, unless it's worth to look through the other parts of the ship. But on the other hand, we have to think about getting back to camp, so let's just head out. And for heading out, we have to resolve card 68 as per the instructions of the Subterran Lake. Card 68, we have to get out of here. Count how many parts of the ship the explorers have entered this round. It doesn't matter whether this was the first or second visit to that part of the ship. So we had the captain's room first, then the powder room, then the storage room, and then the captain's room again. So that's 4 visits. So 4. The water blocks the tunnel back to shore, but you're able to find a small path in the cave that takes you out of the cave. Put your second action marker on exploration and continue the round like normal. Basically what it means is we lost a little bit of time, had to take a detour, and we can still continue on exploring or not. And since we're placing them on here, I guess we also have to pay 1 energy. And then it's normally the blue player's turn to put down his 2 markers, and then we'll resolve normally, and basically in the afternoon the green and the yellow player are still out there and can either explore further on or they have to try and head back. Okay, the blue player has to organize some food. So he decides to go on here, which costs him 2 energy. He can't pick the same action twice because that's not allowed. Then next up, not as an action, but just, we don't forget, we put some wood into the fire. And then we should probably also try and salvage this. But on the other hand, maybe we should take care about the food first. So he decides to put his other token here, so he can do a camp action, and then we'll see what we actually do depending on how much food we find. So, food. That's 2, which is actually not too bad, so we're only missing 1 food. So we could either go fishing, because the vegetable garden has to be planted first, so that wouldn't help us out. Or we can just use, this is also edible, and simply gain 1 food for ourselves, and then the other players can basically share the other food. So we just go on here, meaning that we will receive 1 food for ourselves. And then it's the exploration of the green and the yellow player. The yellow player will still go first. Basically, they have the option of going down the caves we found earlier or just continuing on. And the yellow player decides to continue on with the exploration. Okay, these are wines or Liana. This is a camp card. And the thing is, we basically found wines that we can turn into rope. So now we have a new action available. We have to pay 2 energy and are able to put another rope piece into our supply. Okay, then the green player has a sprayed ankle. That's not good. First of all, the difficulty is increased by 1. He suffers a wound and loses 1 energy. So 1 wound and 1 energy. Then it's the yellow player again, and they decide to push on. It's not easy to get along with each other. First, foot. So now it's them who advance. Add card 51 to the camp and card number 10 to the interior of the island, or the jungle as I called before, but interior is the proper term. And card number 51 is a red card, meaning that it has a negative effect and you can only get rid of it by actually doing it. Well, it's an argument, so basically whoever takes it can pick a fight with another of the players, and whoever wins can take a story point token off the loser. Then it's the green player's turn again. The monkey. First of all, a foot symbol. Apparently the monkey wants to play with us. He throws a coconut. Roll a die. That's a 2. The coconut hits you on the head. You suffer 1 wound. If you spend 1 energy, you can throw a stone at the monkey. Sure, why not? 6. You hit the monkey who drops 1 of the nuts. Get 2 food. Okay, so 1 wound, 1 energy, 2 food. That's probably not too bad. And then we have to add card 43 to the interior of the island. Then it's the yellow player's turn again. A dead tree. It's a camp card. And now the thing is that the camp is basically full. So we have to replace something. And I think we can replace this. I'm just taking a short look, because that would allow us to take 3 cards of the coast deck and take a look at all of them and put 1 at the bottom. But we're almost done with the coast deck anyway. So let's just replace this. And then we put 5 wood on this card, and whenever we take wood from the action space here, we get 1 from the supply and 1 from this card. And the difficulty for returning is still at 5, so we push on, and the green player gets some strange berries. First, the difficulty is increased to 6. You find a handful of tasty berries. If you want to eat them, roll a die. And that is actually too risky. There's 50-50 chance that we'll lose our last energy. It's just a little bit food, yes, okay. If we were successful, it would also be a story point token, but this is just too risky. So we push on, and it's the yellow player again. That's a message in a bottle with a foot. Basically the message says, only God knows how much I loathe that stone that looks like a turtle, which became the symbol of my imprisonment over the years. If one merciful soul might find it, please follow the tracks and try and find my camp. Keep this card. If you ever find a stone that is formed like a turtle, resolve card 27. We're still pushing, so green player. A coconut tree. Difficulty is increased by 1. So that's 7. If the group pays 1 energy per explorer, so that would be 2 altogether, add 2 forage tiles to the offer and 1 food token to the storage. The thing is, we only have 3 energy amongst each other, and also we are not that desperate for food, so I think we just let this one pass. And the yellow player. Edible insects. Difficulty increases by 1, so we're at 8. Maybe we should think about turning back. If you discard a random story point token, and the yellow player actually doesn't have any, you receive 2 food. Well, too bad we can't do this. And since they're at 8, the green player decides he wants to head back, and then the yellow player can decide whether he'll join the green player, and he decides to join him. So they both head back with only 1 roll of the die, and they need an 8 or more. And that is a 5. So what they can do, since they don't have any story point tokens, they can lose energy as they are explorers, so basically 2 energy. So he drops to 0 and he drops to 1 to try again. And this time they exactly got an 8, so they're fine and they're back in camp. Then we could decide to actually cook this thing, but we're so low on energy, so we'll eat it. Then yellow player is first. He eats this one and is back at 2. Blue player eats 1. Then the supply is empty, but the green player still has his own stuff, so he eats both, and he's back at 2. And the blue player decides to keep this one. Fire is burning, wood is consumed, everybody gets another energy. Then the green player has 2 injuries. He has to roll a die per injury, and if at least one of them comes up as a 1, the highest wound will become a trauma or infection. But there's no 1. So he's actually fine. And then the blue player becomes the starting player again. The new event card. Okay, first it gets stormy again. So rolls for returning to camp will be a -1. Then we don't get a new cube, which is fine because there's still one there. I want to be alone right now. The starting player becomes melancholic. He can't choose an action which is already performed by another castaway. And if he wants to start an exploration, nobody else can join him. Okay, the blue player has his pocket watch, which lets him put the white pawn on any space, even on the main board, and he decides to pay 2 energy to salvage. So we have a fishing net, which lets you draw another fish tile when you go fishing, but it doesn't stack with the bonus from the fisherman, so that's not as useful to us. Then we have some medicine, we have canned goods twice, and we have a barrel of gunpowder. The blue player is first, and well, since he is the doctor, he decides to take the medicine. It'll be worth 5 victory points at the end of the game, or he can use it if somebody rests and is really wounded, because we can heal 2 wounds in the worst case, and all wounds and 2 traumas or infections in the best case. And I keep saying traumas and infections, which is kind of stupid. In German it's infections, in the English it's trauma, but basically it's the same thing. Okay, let's stay thematic here. The green player, as the cook, decides to use the canned goods, so it just gets 2 food. And the yellow player takes the barrel of gunpowder. This can be discarded to take 6 fishing tiles and put it into storage, basically dynamite fishing, adding 4 to a strength roll, and who knows, maybe it could be useful in other ways. And it'll also give you a base value of 4 strength, so if you decide to discard it, I guess that's +8. Blue player decides to perform camp action. Green player wants to build the next level of shelter, puts 1 wood in the fire. Yellow player also wants to perform a camp action. The blue player decides to go and gather wood. The green player decides to rest after he's built. And the yellow player selects yet another camp action. The blue player uses the vegetable patch, which costs him 1 energy, his last one. If there are no forage tokens on the card, then we put on 4 from the supply. Then he collects wood, 1 from the supply and 1 from the dead tree. The yellow player goes fishing and gets 2. So this is very unlucky. So with this other token he decides to take the spot to get 1 food from the supply. Or he could go dynamite fishing, but it's not that bad. We have 4 food at least. Then the green player decides to build the shelter. It'll cost 4 energy. He decides to give up 2. And then the yellow player gives up 2. And then we need 2 wood and a rope. So those are discarded. And then we have our level 3 shelter. And the green player gets 1 story point token with a 4, because a construction he suggested was completed. And then he gets to rest in the new shelter. He rolls a die. 3 energy and 1 wound. So he's almost back to normal again. The blue player eats his food. The green player gives away his food. 1 to the yellow player, 1 to the blue player. The blue player eats the other food. And the yellow player also eats both. Then the wood in the fire is consumed. Then we have to roll for the infection of the green player. And then this one is passed over here. No weather change. Then 2+ on the cubes. So we get another one. And these are very strong waves, so we won't be able to fish this round. Since we won't be able to fish, the green player decides to put the starting player token onto the vegetable patch. That costs him 1 energy. And the topmost tile is put into the storage. And it's only a 1, so we need to find other sources of food. The green player decides to use a camp action. The yellow player decides to go gathering food. The blue player also decides to take camp action. The green player decides to go on an expedition. The yellow player decides to start working on the big sign in the sand. And the blue player decides to take a little rest at the end of the round. The yellow player gets 1 food tile, which is a 3, which is great, because now there's enough for everybody. The green player decides to plan an expedition, and this is a little tricky now, because it says if your next action is to start an expedition, which is actually the case, then don't pay any energy for it. But you already paid the energy, so do we get it back? As a rule of thumb, I would say yes. And he also gets 1 story point token. Then the blue player gets a camp card. He decides for the act of strength, so he gets a wound and 3 additional strength points. And then the yellow player starts the sign in the sand. A sign in the sand is a construction that can go over multiple rounds, and basically we need to spend a total of 12 energy over as many rounds as we like. And the yellow player starts off by spending 1 energy, and to mark that we can put a cube here, so 11 more to go. The blue player can spend all his 3 extra and also his remaining 3, so that's a total of 6. And the green player also decides to put in 2, so we're at 9 altogether. And then it's the expedition, and the green player is alone on it.